Section 5.1, Introduction to Percents. Percent means parts of 100, or per 100, or out of 100. Write each percent as a decimal and as a fraction. Let's start with 120, then go to 4.3, then 0.45, and then finally 13%. Number 1, 120%. To convert from a percent to a decimal, you simply move the decimal point 2 places to the left. In the number 120, the decimal point is technically at the end, after the 0. So if we move it 2 places to the left, we end up with 1.20, or simply 1.2. If we convert it to a fraction, we take the number 120 and no matter what, divide it by 100. It's always out of 100 no matter what. If we reduce, we end up with 12/10, and then finally 6/5, or 1 1/5. Number 2, 4.3%. Again, to convert from a percent to a decimal, you move the decimal point 2 places to the left. So we end up with 0.043. If we convert it to a fraction, we take the number 4.3 and divide it by 100. You'll notice this time, however, that the numerator itself has a decimal point. We have to get rid of the decimal point. We have to move it 1 place to the right to make it 43. Whatever we do to the numerator, we have to do the same thing to the denominator. So we move the decimal point 1 place to the right in the number 100, which makes it 1,000. 43 over 1,000 is our final answer because it's in lowest terms. Number 3, 0.45%. Again, to convert from a percent to a decimal, move it 2 places to the left, and we end up with 0.0045. Write the number 0.45 over 100 to convert it to a fraction. This time we have to move the decimal point 2 places to the right in the number 0.45 to make it a whole number, 45. And whatever we do to the numerator, we have to do to the denominator. So we have to move the decimal point 2 places to the right as well. We end up this time with 10,000. So we have 45 over 10,000, both of which can be reduced, or be divided, I should say, by 5. And our final answer is 9 over 2,000. And finally, number 4, 13%. To convert it to decimal, we end up with 0.13. And as a fraction, we end up with 13 over 100, which is in lowest terms. Write the following as a fraction. Number 1, 33 1/3%, and number 2, 16 2/3%. Number 1, 33 1/3%. Start by writing the number 33 1/3 over 100, just like always. This one's tricky because we have a complex fraction. We have a smaller fraction within a larger fraction. What I would suggest doing is writing it out as a division problem horizontally. So we have the numerator divided by the denominator, or 33 1/3 divided by 100. Next, let's convert 33 1/3 to an improper fraction, so 100 over 3, and then make 100 a fraction by putting it over 1. So we have 100 over 3 divided by 100 over 1. The next step would be to change the division problem into a multiplication problem. So we have 100 over 3 times 1 over 100. We can cross cancel the 100s and we end up with 1 over 3. If you type 1 divided by 3 into your calculator, you will get 0.3 repeating. Number 2, 16 2/3%. Let's write the number 16 2/3 over 100. Then, because we have a complex fraction, write it out horizontally as a division problem, 16 2/3 divided by 100. Then convert 16 2/3 to an improper fraction and write 100 as 100 over 1. So we end up with 50/3 divided by 100 over 1. Change the division problem into a multiplication problem, so 50/3 times 1 over 100. This time we can cross reduce. 50 over 100 reduces to 1 over 2. And our final answer is 1/6. If you type 1 divided by 6 into your calculator, you will get 0.16 repeating. Now let's convert a fraction to a percent. Let's start with 3/8. To convert it to a percent, the first thing you want to do is determine the decimal equivalent. So simply type 3 divided by 8 into your calculator and you'll get 0.375. To convert from a decimal to a percent, we move the decimal point 2 places to the right. So 0.375 converts to 37.5%. Let's try this one. Write 0.015 and 2.3 as percents. Again, to convert from a decimal to a percent, you move the decimal point 2 places to the right. So 0.015 converts to 1.5%. 2.3 converts to 230%. Let me talk about one more thing involving converting from percent to decimal and vice versa. For example, let's talk about 7% versus 70%. Be really careful in a situation like this. 7% is 0.07 and 70% is 0.7. Last two examples. Write 19/80ths as a percent. Start by typing 19 divided by 80 into your calculator. You get 0.2375, and then move the decimal point 2 places to the right. Our final answer is 23.75%. Finally, write 2/3 as a percent. This is a special case. When you type 2 divided by 3 in your calculator, you'll get 0.6 repeating. If you move the decimal point 2 places to the right, you get 66.6 repeating. Now, because we know that 0.6 repeating itself is 2/3, we can write our final answer as 66 2/3%. This is the same type of situation as 1/3. 1/3 is 0.3 repeating, and if you converted that to a percent, you'd get 33.3 repeating. You can write your final answer in that case as 33 1/3%.